Guys, welcome back to the sunny side. And it is a beautiful sunny day outside.
It sure is. It truly is a sunny day. It won't be hard to find the sunny side today, that's for sure.
It's true. And we went on a walk this morning, and we're going to post a photo. It says Sunnyside Drive.
Yes, we found Sunnyside Drive on our walk. We were like, it's meant to be.
It is. It's meant to be. And as you can tell, we are in a different location today.
Yes, and we have a different sound. So we're trying to tackle two things at once today. We're trying to get our lighting issues and our sound issues overcome here.
Yeah. And I feel like so far the lighting seems
Yeah.
way better.
Totally. And we'll see how the sound works out with us holding the microphones instead, because it was a little echoey before.
Yeah. And we have a couple different microphone options. And so we're just kind of rolling with it and seeing how it works.
Yeah.
But
we're just figuring it out.
One by one. And thank you guys for joining us on the journey of, figuring it out. I might kink my back sitting here for a little while, but
it's okay.
I'll be moving a lot today, guys, but you're just going to have to bear with us.
Yes, I know.
We
have like kind of a heavy topic today, which is funny for how
laid back we're going to be.
But it's a topic that's been blowing up our DMs.
Yeah.
So we were just basically like being begged to talk about this. So today's the day. We're going to do
today's the day.
Yeah.
And, we will preface, I guess, by saying, we love the local church.
We do. Yep.
We are both very involved in the local church.
Yep.
Our kids are very involved in the local church.
Yep. And there's so much good that comes out of it. Like so much good.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to remember, like, there's no perfect person.
Yep.
And there's no perfect church. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned along my life's journey being in the church world, is that every church that you go to will have something or many things that you don't agree with.
Yeah.
And that's because it's imperfect people leading a church.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's differences between like your own personal opinion, which can vary, and that's totally fair. And then biblical differences maybe too, which we can touch on that later. But we are tackling today the topic of especially divorce, remarriage, abuse, things like that go on, and how the church handles it, and maybe how it's handled it in the past and maybe currently. And just, this is not really a condemnation.
No.
It's more just a conversation to say, hey, we have had DMs flooded with women saying, this happened to me. This is my experience.
You literally, literally broke the internet with your little reel or rant.
I guess rant. Maybe.
Rant.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally broke the internet. Like our inbox, I was like, oh, I cannot keep up.
Yeah. Yeah. So we did try to that was sort of the precursor, the little video of to put the feelers out there to address it. And then, we just got even more feedback and people saying, please do an episode on this, which from the very beginning, we've had people sharing these stories. So we know that it's the good thing is, I hope nobody feels judged or pointed out, because the messages that we've received are not from one single person or pastor. They're not from one single church. They're not even from this area specifically.
No.
Some are, some aren't. So this seems to be a prevalent.
It's from all over. Literally, there's people from the U.S.
Yes.
That it's not just like, oh, this is a church we've even attended.
Right. So it's not personal. If you're like, oh, we know what they're talking about, wink, wink. No.
I promise you don't. You might think you do, but the amount of conversations that we've flooded in from quite literally all over Canada and the U.S., maybe even further, but definitely Canada and the U.S., is this ongoing conversation, which, again, leads to believe that there is no perfect church. Yeah. And so I think oftentimes people do get, church hurt, but it's like, you got to be really careful with that.
Totally.
Because, again, it's going to happen anywhere.
Yeah.
People are imperfect. Pastors are imperfect. And when you're looking to, especially a leader or a pastor, to be the be all and the end all and answer all your questions, and they're never going to.
No. And it's what I think is funny is, I think that this is my own personal opinion. I have no research to back this up, but
no ChatGPT.
No,
really?
I know, just personal and anecdotal, I think. But I think back in the day, you talk Little House on the Prairie days, right? There was no counselors, there was no therapists. If there was a problem in the community or in the church, you went to your preacher at your church, and you would sit down and talk to them and seek their advice and their counsel. And that's amazing, and that's great.
Yeah.
I think the benefit we have now is there are so many.
Sorry, hair.
Get it out.
Get it out.
We have so many resources available, both like online, in person. People who there's so much research has been done. People have specifically trained in the areas of abuse, trauma, emotional health. So pastors can have some of the burden of the responsibility to navigate those situations kind of released from them, and really could kind of pass it over to the experts. Because if you're a pastor, you've gone to seminary, you've studied the Bible,
done theology,
totally, but you specifically studied emotional health, abuse, things like that? Probably not. Maybe some have. Yeah. That's amazing, but probably not. So of course, to expect a pastor to understand and see the signs and really know what to do, it's almost unfair, right? And I think, from my personal opinion, is like the church is where you go for just support, community support, and for prayer. Yeah. But if you're in some sort of complex, abusive situation, and you're going to go to your pastor, and whatever they tell you, it's going to be like, that's what I'm going to do, because they're the pastor. Yeah. That's where you might run into trouble, depending on who your pastor is and how much experience they have in that area, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, and again, this is my personal opinion, is that it shouldn't be up to the pastor, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it shouldn't be, yes, you might want to alert them to maybe the situation, but I actually think, first and foremost, you need to go to like a professional counselor. Yeah. And be like, this is what's going on. Because like when you're, I guess it's a fine line, because when you're on staff at a church, right, I do think the pastor needs to be, or the lead pastor, or the lead team, or whatever needs to be made aware. Yeah. But they're not equipped. No. They're not equipped to handle these situations where it's like, oh, my husband's been, having an affair. My wife's been having an affair, or he or she is being abusive, or like, because it's a fine line of like, what does that look like? Yeah. And when you don't have the training. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right?
That's right. Well, and that's where I feel like what I've noticed in my own personal situation, and then just from so many conversations with so many women that we've had even through this podcast and before, one pattern I've noticed is that a lot of times people, women especially, will share, and we know this also happens to men, but because we're women talk to us more than men do. Yeah. So that's our frame of reference. Yes. But often women will tell their pastor or their leadership at their church what's been happening. If there's been sort of abuse, there's been infidelity, affairs, whatever. And then what I noticed a pattern is the pastor will often offer advice sort of right away. Instead of, very few times have I heard of a pastor asking questions and investigating. That, I think, is the piece where things go wrong. Because instead of investigating and saying, well, give me examples, and what happened, and how often does that happen, and when did it happen last? When did it start to happen? All of those kinds of things. They don't ask those questions. So then they don't actually sometimes know what they're dealing with. Right. So then I think a pastor can sometimes blur that line between maybe just like a difficulty in marriage, where people, it's just a normal sort of healthy roadblock that they get to, that they need some counsel to get through.
Yeah, like we're fighting.
Totally. Or to see the signs of like abuse. And I think that's where pastors have missed it so many times, innocently.
Of course.
Just because they don't know, and they probably don't have the training to ask those kind of questions. Yeah. Then they give advice to a woman, treating the situation as if it's just a bump in the road, when really, no, it's dangerous or abusive or whatever. Yeah. And then it's like that moment, that's where the hurt comes, where the woman leaves feeling like, what? Like, they didn't help me. They told me to do, this or that. The pastor probably is unaware of what they've just done, because they didn't investigate and get a full picture of what the true situation was. Right. And because they're not a therapist, or they're not trained in that way, they probably would never think to ask some of those questions.
Those harder questions. It's true. And there's a very big difference between, we're hitting a rough patch in our marriage and we're experiencing some difficulties, roadblock, or whatever you want to call it. Or like, I am being verbally, physically, spiritually, or sexually abused. Yeah. Or financially. Like, there's a lot of different abuse, right? And that is also the thing, is that I think with anybody, not just within the church world, people look at physical abuse like it's the absolute worst.
Right. Because you can see that.
Because you can see
marks.
it. You can see it. But
totally.
I'm like, there is still so much damage
Yep.
in all the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're being financially abused, if you're being spiritually abused, like that is so hard. Mm-hmm. And I know that people are probably like, spiritual abuse? Like, what does that look like? Mm-hmm. Like, to me, it looks like I have a friend that, you know, it's like, oh, well, I am the head. Right. And I am, well, you must submit to me. Yeah. But like submission is like, no, like, yes, wives submit to your husbands, but husbands lay down your life for your wife.
Yeah.
And when you're a husband and you can lay down your life for your wife and like, then you submit to your husband, but it's not like, oh, he is the head.
No.
It is like, we are a team.
Yeah.
But when a husband lays down his life first,
yes,
then a wife can so much easily
submit.
And it's 100%. Not in like a way that's like, oh, you're my dominant. Like,
yes.
Like I actually struggle with churches talking on submission unless they cover, like, I'm like, you have to cover it so well. Mm-hmm. Like you have to go through everything because I am like, no. Mm-hmm. Husbands have the harder role, I believe.
Totally, because their bulk of the responsibility
is on them.
And if they
have
don't
to
do it, totally, right? And that's where things go wrong. Like husbands don't have the maturity and they don't have the character to be trusted with this responsibility of leading a woman and a household. Yeah. And so then it makes it very hard to submit. Yeah. And sometimes even it sounds like from the comments that that piece has been missing, where pastors just say, submit and then everything will be okay because that's what the Bible says. Well, the God's intent for that was actually not to oppress women, but it was for safety for women, right? Especially back, you know, like in the time when Jesus was on the earth, right? Like women couldn't work. Women, if you didn't have someone to take care of you, you were vulnerable. Yeah. And you were in a really tough spot. Yeah. So the submission, like you said, in a healthy way is actually for your safety. Yeah. And it's to be like, you can exhale. Yeah. And like this man is going to come into your life. He's going to love you. He's going to protect you. He's going to put your needs and like above his own even. He's going to look out for you. And imagine the freedom that if you knew someone has my best interest at heart in every decision they make,
you'd want to submit.
It's easy peasy.
You'd want to like, and again, I struggle with that word so much only because of the way it's been taught for so many years. But it's true. Like you would be like, oh, like.
Yeah, it's not like scrub the floor, submit to me. No. Wash my underwear, submit to me. It's
I'm
not that.
Nothing, right? Fine, sir. I'd hire a maid for that. Yeah, right. Shoot, like, I am the maid.
That's like literally.
Quite literally. That's not going to work well. But you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to like sit there and scrub floors naked in stiletto.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you would. And I think you're laughing because you're like, oh, wait, I have done that. That's why you're laughing.
It's true. I'm like, what do you mean scrub floors naked in stilettos? Who would do such a thing?
Not you. Yes,
definitely me. No, but like it is true. It's that I feel like we have to like laugh in this topic,
it's true. We do.
Gonna be like whatever. But it's true. Like honestly, I think so. When I talk about spiritual abuse, it's like, oh well, this is the church we're going to, and this is the way that it's going to be, and we're gonna lead this small, like almost making all the decisions without even taking like your wife's like preferences into account or like God told me this, but like, sorry, like God doesn't work like that. Like the Holy Spirit will talk to two people and two parties. Like he doesn't just speak to a man.
What if it's something that's going to hurt the woman all the time? It's like, that's a red flag of like, did God tell you that? Yes. Or are you saying that to control?
That's right. Like, so, and that's it, right? Like, submission was never meant to be about control. And I think that's where we've lost our way.
That's
like,
so true.
It's not about control.
No.
The moment that a man
it's actually about sacrifice.
Yeah.
Right?
Oof, that's a
for the man. Right? Like
we are ready. If you want us at your churches, women's events, like we're ready to speak.
We'll edit out the naked and stiletto part because we know how to behave on stage. Don't worry.
It's
the podcast, we're just a little more free flowing.
We're just a little like, you know, it's raw cut.
Right.
Let's move, but on a church stage,
we can put our best foot forward.
I will pull it together, you know, but it's true. It's not, that's it. Submission is not about control. It's about sacrifice. Yeah. And I think that is
sacrifice first of the man.
Yeah.
Too, not of the woman, like not just of the woman.
Yeah.
The man has to sacrifice his own pride, selfishness, selfish ambition for the sake of the woman and the family and his children. Yeah. To protect them and to see them flourish and grow and to serve. And then in turn, the woman can feel safe to serve the man as well.
Yeah.
And right? Like, and then that's God's design where you're like, oh, I see it now. Like that would be the most beautiful way to have a relationship. But
absolutely.
it's when the selfishness on either end truly could get in that messes it all up. Right. And then you like butt heads.
Yeah. And I think in our cases, in both of our situations, it would have been very selfish on their parts.
Totally.
In the world in which they live. Because the moment that you can go off and make the decisions that you make, that they made, sorry, I should say, there was no laying down their lives for us. There was no like putting us first. There was no, in fact, it was very selfish in nature. Yeah. And I think, you know, both of us wanted those marriages to work so badly that we even probably overlooked a lot in our own lives or didn't want to say anything. Yeah.
And I think that even goes back to what we talked about a few episodes ago about marriage. It's like, I don't think knowing your husband, knowing my husband, ex-husbands, looking back, neither one of those two had any business getting married. Neither one of them were ready mentally, emotionally, spiritually to get married.
Absolutely.
And not to say that we are perfect wives, but I feel like maybe that even goes to the maturity thing too, right? When a lot of times women are mature faster than men.
Yeah.
And I feel like for both you and I, we were young, but we were like ready we just wanted that commitment and a home. And I
came out of the birth canal, like literally.
Right?
Just put a ring on my finger.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I was ready.
You're like, just want to have kids and want to have a home. And I wanted to like make dinner. And I had no problem submitting in that way. So that 100%. Wasn't an issue for me. It's just that the problem for me and for you too was we're trying to submit to people who were not safe to submit to. Yeah. We actually were submitting. It's like, I'll do what you want. I'll say, and like, let's do this together. And, oh, you want to do this? Okay, we'll do this. And I'm going to make dinner and I'm going to clean up. And it was just hurt after hurt because they weren't ready to be taking on the responsibility of caring for someone who's going to submit their life to you. Right. Then they didn't submit in return. Right. And
that's right. And it goes back to that whole, like, you know, marriage isn't meant to make you happy. It's meant to make you holy. And I do believe it's both and. Like, you can be happy in a marriage. Yeah. But I think in, you know, both of our cases, it was very much, you know, even with my ex, it was always you don't know me. You don't understand me. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like,
yeah, what does that even mean?
That's not even an out. Like, that's not even an out. Like, we have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. Yeah. Like, give some grace here for the season that we're in. Like, and even in that, like, we always had a clean house and there was always meals on the table. And like, sometimes was there not for sure, but like majority. So I'm, you know, in our situations, I think we are passionate about it because we were the wives that like, quote unquote submitted. Yeah. Right. And I do think there are some pastors that handle it beautifully. Like there was a pastor that walked me through, you know, my divorce. And I remember actually him looking at me and he knew that there were some things pre-marriage. Well, sorry. Yes. I ended up telling him that there were some things pre-marriage that I probably overlooked because again, I was young and you're naive. You're just like, yeah, we can overcome the world.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Hand in hand. Yeah. Any issues, right? Yeah. And I remember I just remember weeping in his office shortly after he had left. And him just being like, Leah, like, this isn't on you. Like, he had no business marrying you. Yeah. When he was dealing with A, B, C, and D. Yeah. And he said, it was almost as if, I'll never forget it. He was like, he was throwing mini grenades as he was walking down the aisle and waiting for them to blow up, like in time. And I just remember being like, that is the best advice. So that's also to say, like, not every pastor, not every leader is gonna give you like not bad advice, but like there are some that are better trained and have like maybe a different side of like empathy or whatever. And I just remember him being like, the best advice he ever gave me then. So following that was, I was like, but I want to fight for my marriage. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to fast and I'm going to pray and I'm going to believe that, like, we can work on this and God can reconcile this. And I remember him saying to me, that's great. And, like, he is, like, the most, like, Holy Spirit-filled, like, pastor. And I remember him saying, that's amazing. But also, your house is burning down. Your house, like there's a fire and you need to get your kids to safety. And so instinct wise, when there's a fire in your house, you're going to grab your kids and you're going to get to safety. He's like, you can pray and contend for a miracle, but you also need to seek legal advice in this time to make sure that you and your kids are like legally provided for, cared for, all these things while still believing for a miracle.
Yeah. That's
and I was like,
advice. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You can do both.
Yeah. You can pray and believe for the miracle, but he was like, you need to make sure that like child support kicks in, that he's helping with bills. Like you have a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. Like you can pray and believe, but you still need to move steps for him because he chose to walk away.
Yeah.
And so there are amazing pastors out there that will also give you great. I'll never forget that advice to be like, there was grenades being thrown all over you. And so he had pretty much said he had no business marrying you in the first place. Yeah. But now here we stand. And how do we move forward?
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's so smart. And like, I do think that you'll know, like when you talk 100%. To a pastor or a church leader or life group leader, whoever you go to, you're going to know when you leave that conversation, if you felt listened to, if you felt supported and loved, if you felt no judgment, then you can probably trust majority of what they say. Yeah. If you leave there feeling like what we've heard from so many people, they didn't even really care. They didn't listen. They just told me what to do without asking questions. They, told like they just, or someone keep pushing you back into the dangerous situation. That's where maybe you say, okay, I love you as a pastor. I enjoy listening to your Bible teaching on Sundays or whatever. But in this situation, I'm not sure if you're the one to go to. But if you leave how you left, feeling like supported and loved, then what a huge blessing, because then you can go to them as well.
And I think, again, I would never recommend somebody going to the pastor. Like that is not, they're not equipped. They're not. They're just not. But in my situation, because we were on staff at a church, that I was very much in the church world as like a pastoral figure, a pastor's wife. So it was just very easy to do that. But I don't think that like even in the regular congregation, people should be approaching their pastors about things like that. Like they're not equipped. They haven't gone to school. Why do you think psychotherapists and all these people have to be in trained school for years and years and years? Yeah. Because it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. And I think that too, there's that for sure, which is a huge piece of it. Yeah. The other piece is like, especially there's like in the Christian world, there's like certain hot button topics where like people have such varying views on them, like, like drinking or abortion or sex before marriage, or there's all these hot button culture talk. I would say divorce is definitely one of those as well. Absolutely. Where some people feel like there's no reason whatsoever. Some people do. You could talk to probably pull 20 people in your church and they might give you all different opinions of what they think. So I think that can be it too. And I think that there has been for years a very unhealthy, toxic belief about divorce and marriage, especially when it comes to women, that is changing now. Yeah. Probably with some more education and understanding things like, drug abuse or mental illness. It's not just, these people can't get along. Sometimes there's way more at play than that. And when there is, the situation is so much more complex. Absolutely. But there are just mindsets too that your pastor might hold that are unhealthy and they're unwilling to maybe just look at it and be like, is this healthy or not? And then they're not the person to go to. Like, I remember, this is so weird, but when my husband finally left for the woman that he was having a secret affair with, and then
which woman?
Right, the last one. Right, not that's true. There were many, just checking. But the final one. That's right. That's true. Fair point.
Glad that we can. I'm glad that we can, laugh at our own demise. We're just fact checking. I just need the audience to know.
Right.
Which one are we talking about? Because I get confused. Was it like? I was just going to start making up names.
Don't say
Bambi,
names.
Barbie, Bimby, Candy. Sorry if your names are any of those.
Yes. No, it was, So the last one where he had then been because he was also on staff at a church at the time, he had been let go or asked to step down for a bit. So then it kind of in our area, right? It's like the Christian community is small and word kind of spread, whatever. And I remember it was within a few days of this happening. Of course, I'm like devastated, just like reeling from the betrayal of it.
Yeah.
The fear of the unknown, what's going to happen. You know, things aren't good with him and I.
Yeah.
Even at that moment, I'm still thinking, do you reconcile? Do you know? I don't know. We had already been through all this therapy and whatever.
Yeah.
And I received an email from a different pastor in the city, from a different church that I don't attend.
Okay.
I knew this man because his kids went to the same school as my kids.
Okay.
But his kids were quite a bit older.
Okay.
So I knew who he was, but we weren't on like, like aside from a hi in the parking lot, never talked to the guy. Didn't know him, doesn't know me.
Okay.
He sent me this long email basically saying that he heard what happened and how basically I must have been a colossal failure as a wife because no man would cheat on his wife unless they were given a reason, and that I'm at fault, and that and that I need to go to him and repent and ask for forgiveness for being such a disappointment as a wife.
Stop it right now.
Yeah, that he would need to go and
pull up this email, show me his name.
Yeah.
I'm coming for you.
Yeah. And I was just like, I read it and I just was like, almost like felt numb.
How
like,
dare you?
And it's like, he
Ew.
doesn't know. And in my head, I'm thinking, which not that I need to justify it to him or to anyone, but I'm thinking, okay, at this point, we've been married for 14 years.
Yeah.
Like, as I've shared on here, weird stuff started happening literally from day one. And I'm thinking, we've been to counseling, numerous therapists, sex addiction rehab, regular rehab. He's been to a doctor. He had a mental health assessments, was on medication for mental health. Like the amount of things. I found an anger management course.
So
how
dare you? Like,
right?
Who does he think he is?
And I'm just thinking, I've stuck by this man, and not just stuck by him, like tried to help him, be like, let's go here, let's go, let's seek this help, let's seek that help. It's not like I've just been sitting around with my head in the sand for 14 years, and then oops, he betrayed me again. Yeah. And I'm thinking also, like, this is the umpteenth betrayal that I have forgiven and still tried to reconcile and not told anybody about it and protected him. And I just, like, I feel like the weight of all, like, knowing all of what had happened over 14 years, it kind of like all just played in my head reading that email thinking, wow, like I can't believe that you would actually
feel like I'm
sit
you're a nicer person than me.
This email.
Like, I think I would have blasted that all over the internet and called him right out. I would have been like, that's awful.
Yeah, it was a little, and then so I actually didn't even reply. I just deleted it and just pretended I never got it and the thing is, what I wanted to write him back, and I didn't, and maybe I should have. I wanted to write him like an email back saying, I received your email. Thank you for your concern. But if you think that I need to be reminded of what a failure I feel like, you have no clue. I already feel like a colossal failure.
Yeah.
As a wife, as a mom, as a whatever. When you have been betrayed like that, when your husband goes and sneaks around with someone behind your back, do you know how horrible that feels? Even if you know, like, you didn't do anything wrong to deserve it, you already feel that way. You don't need strangers sending you emails to be like,
strangers, let alone a pastor.
Totally. And then it was so hard because of course, like,
you would see him.
I've seen him around town here and there. Not a lot because we don't have any friends in common, I think. But I have.
Is he still pastoring?
I don't actually know. But you know what's really crazy is he was still pastoring. And over the years, I've had a couple people say, oh, when other people have gone through like marriage struggles, this guy, this pastor, he likes to counsel people, like send the men there, because they want like a man to deal with a man. And I've always just been like,
no thanks.
No, like not saying why, because I didn't want to like
throw him
under the bus, but to be like, ooh, I don't. The only person I actually did tell about it was my own therapist, and she was just like, yeah, don't send any men there. Like that's a crazy thing.
What is wrong with people?
It's one thing to think it, but like you actually sat down at a computer
wrote an email
and wrote that, and then like read through all your spelling mistakes and stuff, and then literally push send. Like
that's awful.
But that's just there's a mindset out there that has no clue, and they don't even have a willingness, to learn, right? To be like, because you're right, that is weird. How come after 14 years this pastor who was, my ex-husband had a good reputation in town.
Yeah.
You would think, oh, and now he's been let go from a church for cheating on his wife.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that's a shock and a surprise, but look into that. Like,
and
that
why do we
always
always blame the wife to go, yeah, well, you must have not been a good wife, or you must have not given him this or this. Since when does it come down to that?
Yeah.
That like, oh, because you're not being a good wife, or, I remember I love following the Carl and Laura Lentz podcast. And I just think it is amazing. I think they're doing incredible things within the church world. And flipping it and flipping the narrative. And it's funny enough, I used to not be able to stand him. Like before everything came out, I was like, I had gone to like a Hillsong event in New York City, and he spoke, and I was like, pretty much like, who is this douchebag? Like something is going to fall with him. And sure enough, it did. But I literally have seen like such a change in him. And they talk on their podcast, about his infidelity and the fall of his leadership. And there's an episode where somebody was like, people think a man cheats because they're not getting enough sex. Like that is literally what they think. And they're like, it has nothing to do with that. And they go on to say like they had probably the best sex life. It was nothing about that. And so oftentimes it's like, oh, well, yeah, he's cheating because, whatever, they're not having enough sex, or he's not attracted to her anymore.
DMs, how many pastors said apparently to people, just go home and have more sex with your husband, and then he'll stop, either like being angry and abusing you or cheating on you. We had a number. I couldn't believe that. I was like, ugh,
like what? Sex is not the be all and the end all. It is important. It is a beautiful thing in your marriage, but when we're telling people to just go home and have more sex,
and putting on, and what's interesting? So I, like when we went to like a sex rehabilitation center for my ex-husband. So this guy, it was in the US, far away. It was super expensive because this guy was like the best of the best. So that's why we went, because it was going to be like, this is going to be the thing that's going to like change it, whatever. He said to me in one session, because, and I said in a session like, oh, maybe I just need to this or that. And, maybe I need to do this or that. And then he'll like, I'll be more attracted to him, whatever. And he was like, no, he said to me, he's like, I have literal famous people in here, literal supermodels. Like he said to me, I can't say their names out of confidentiality, but if I told you their name, you would recognize them. They've come to me because they're in their relationship. Their spouse is cheating on them, and they're a supermodel, and they are having sex and whatever. And he said it has nothing to do with that. What he actually said, which was mind-blowing to me, but again, this comes with education. I wish pastors would learn this. He said, when a man cheats, most of the time it has nothing to do with the actual act of sex, because often they can be having sex at home. What it is he said that most of these men, and this is what he was describing with my ex-husband, he said it's about the chase. It's a narcissistic, selfish thing like that. When you're dating or you're young and like someone, like you catch someone's eye and that flirting, and then he said it's about that cat and mouse chase to them. That's what they're addicted to. That going into a room and seeing like, who can I get attention from? And then getting attention and then seeing how far can I take this? Well, can I get them to go out with me? Oh, can I get them to kiss me? Oh, can I get them to sleep with me? Like it's all about that kind of thing. And he said the problem is when a man struggles in that way, when he gets married, his wife becomes familiar to him and safe. He will never experience that sort of like, chase from his wife, because there's stability and safety and knownness there. So if your husband is addicted to chasing down attention from women, he'll always cheat on you. You can be a 10 out of 10 wife. You can be a literal supermodel, like he said, and it won't matter because what you can't provide for them, the one thing they want. And so, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I never thought of it that way. And it did. It helped me to feel less of the, like, of that insecurity, right? We're like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not enough? And you're just like trying and trying to do everything they want to make them happy. And it never works. And they never stay faithful because it's not about that. It's about, they're looking for something that a wife can never give them.
And that's where I feel like in a lot of marriages, the addiction to porn comes into play. Because even some of these guys that maybe wouldn't cheat and have stayed with their wives, well, then they look for that cat and mouse chase even on the internet.
Totally.
And with porn or with whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, because I used to notice that too with my ex-husband. Like, even in front of me, he was very flirtatious with like a waitress or with people from our church. And I was kind of just like, oh, I don't know, maybe that's just his personality.
Right.
But looking back, I'm like, no, it was such a red flag. It was like he couldn't help himself, but to always position himself in a way that he would garner attention from people, right?
Wow.
And so, and it's like, so it's those complex mental, emotional issues that, like a therapist would have been trained on and understand. Yeah. But a pastor who's coming out of seminary, they might not even, that would have never dawned on them that that's even a possibility. Yeah. Right. So then when you're going to them for counsel, they're not going to think that. They might think they're helping you by saying, oh, just have more sex. It's like, well, that's not working. Sure. Right. And it's not working for that reason because the problem's something else. Yeah.
And, or it's like that, the Bible doesn't like divorce or like God doesn't like divorce. And I mean, it's very clear that, God hates divorce, but God hates divorce. I think we talked about this in a previous episode because of the hardness of hearts. Like that's why he allowed it, because hearts got hard. But if you're willing and open to changing both parties and working together, well, then divorce doesn't need to be a thing. But when you have somebody that's continually being abusive, continually being, unfaithful, I'm sorry, but like there are biblical grounds to leave. And there's not a lot of people that maybe would agree with that or believe. I think we have changed and we've come a long way, with that. But I just think I'm like, if you're constantly being abused, like that is no life. And God would not want you staying in that either. Like that is not, you have full biblical grounds. Yeah.
And your and your kids, when you have kids, you're subjecting your kids to that. Like
absolutely. And God hates divorce too, because it does. Like, and that is why it needs to be a decision that is heavily weighed, because it affects not just you two, not just your kids. Like it's a ripple effect. It affects grandparents and aunts and uncles and different people. Like it just keeps going, right? Like, and it's for the rest of your life. Grandbabies. Like weddings, like there's so many things that will, like you think, oh yeah, but when they're older, no, it affects forever. Yeah. So weigh it, but like also don't stay in a marriage where you're being abused. I don't care what pastor tells you that, like,
it's not right.
It's not worth it. And I know that we've talked about this, and I know that even you would say like you stayed as long as you did for your kids, but it's like now that you're out of it, would have you changed it?
Oh, do you know what? I think of that so many times for two reasons. Two things I was just thinking of when you said that. One, I have a friend whose dad was abusive, and I think he might have even had fidelity issues too. And the stress and the fear of the kids growing up in that home. And I don't know if the dad was ever abusive to the kids so much, but very much the mom and the kids were in the home. And even to this day, like she's an adult woman and the relationship with her family is still fractured in a way, because she would say, why didn't our mom take us out of that? Like living in that was awful. It was terrifying. Yeah. It was scary. It was stressful. And my mom forced us to stay because she could have left and she never did. Yeah. That's one. And then two, it's funny. My son's like, well, Zeke's were like this too. Yeah. Both of our sons are like these deep thinkers, and for boys, they come out with some stuff that's absolutely. My kid's therapist was like, for a boy, like Cole is very articulate, well spoken, whatever. Yeah. And he was saying to me the other day, we're driving. It was so funny. And he was, because we were driving past our old house, the first house that I bought after our divorce was in a bad part of town. Yeah, there was a lot of crazy things happened at that house. The house itself I liked, was cute, but it wasn't a good area. It was like small and cute and whatever. It's what we could afford, what we needed at the time. Absolutely. We drove past it, and my son and I had made a comment like, oh, that house is so cute, I loved it. And he was like, really? I hated that house. And I was like, what? Yeah. Why? And he was like telling me how all these bad memories they had there, because that's at the point too where like their dad kept coming back
right,
and asking for forgiveness and saying he's going to come back and then leaving again and then
right,
coming back and saying he wanted to reconcile and then
right,
oh no, he's with another woman and then now he's left her and he's come back. Like
right.
it was so much back
chaos.
and forth like that, and so painful for the kids. And he'd had a couple of his like anger outburst there where like he's breaking things and
right,
smashing, and he had done that there and then every house that we'd had before.
Right.
And my son made that note. He said the house we live in now is the only house that dad hasn't like destroyed something in or like
wow,
been violent in. And he was like, and he said, he's like, I remember the first night of the house we live in now.
Yeah.
He's like, I had the best sleep. Like I just went to sleep. I had such a peaceful sleep. I woke up and I was like so happy to be in this house and so happy to be out of that other house, out of that neighborhood, and
Wow.
just felt like it was such a fresh start and just really like had these memories. And he said, he's like, I'm so glad that like, he said,
Yeah.
obviously his first choice would be that he had two healthy parents that were
Yes.
married. But he said, I'm so glad that you're not married to dad. I hated living like that.
Yeah.
I hated it.
Yeah.
I could barely sleep. I would have upset stomachs all the time.
Yeah.
It was so stressful. I was always scared of what was going to happen next. And
Yeah.
I didn't even like, I guess you
Realize.
know that the kids probably but
Right.
he'd never articulated it
Wow.
that like clearly
Yeah.
before. And I was just like, okay. And he's like, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go back. I'm so happy. Like, I'm so
Wow.
glad. And I was just like, even for like my mother's heart,
Yeah.
like that was so peaceful
Yeah.
because there's so much guilt that comes with
Yeah.
never knowing, is this
Yeah.
the right thing?
Is this
Is this
the right
not the right
decision?
thing? But
So looking back,
yeah,
you would have maybe left sooner.
maybe,
Yeah.
because knowing, because this is the thing. For me, it's like, if I think, even if someone comes to me and asks me for advice, if I think, or it looks like, or they describe that the partner that they're with is actually willing to genuinely change.
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
I will champion you that forever.
Yeah.
Yes, do that. Do the therapy. Give
Yes.
the second, third, fifth, 50th chance.
Yeah.
If they are truly
Trying.
repentant and like, I cannot do this anymore, I've got to change. 100%. I agree.
Yeah.
If somebody's just taking advantage
Yeah.
and they say, "Oh yeah, sorry," and they're actually abusing the forgiveness that you give,
Yes,
they have
yes,
no
yes, yes.
intention
Yeah.
of ever changing. To me, that's where I'm like, you leave now, you leave in 10 years, or you don't leave now. They're just going to leave you eventually when they get sick of you, which is sort of what happened in my case, right? Like
Yeah.
the staying it only prolonged the inevitable.
Right.
Right? Because it's like,
It was
this is
always
not
gonna
someone
end.
who's committed
Yeah.
and who's going to work on the marriage.
Yeah.
It's like, they're just going to run this course until they
Right.
can find somebody else that they think they can start over with and start this cycle all
The
over
cycle.
again. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and again, that's where I think sometimes a trained eye and mind
Yeah.
has to be able to determine that. I
Right.
think sometimes pastors mean well, but in a situation, they can't tell the difference.
No.
They can't tell, is this person really repentant and they're going to change or
Yeah.
not? Because in the therapy that we did to
Yeah.
he also said this other tagline that I always thought, he always said, believe the behavior.
Mm.
Because I would say that, I'm like, but he said he's sorry. And he said, and he would be like, Pam, stop. Believe the behavior. Don't tell me a single thing about what he said. Tell me what he's done.
Right.
What has he done that's
Right.
different?
And it goes back to that whole thing, like actions speak louder than words.
Right? And then that's the thing. I would sit there and be like,
His behavior.
I couldn't really give an
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
And he's like, a lot of people who are manipulative and narcissistic
are so good with their words.
and they're compulsive liars too. It
Right.
all goes hand in hand.
Yes.
And everybody thinks that, like, oh, I could tell if someone lied. You
Yeah,
can't.
you can't.
Sometimes people
Yeah.
are so good you can't tell.
And especially if they're lying all the time,
Yeah.
like compulsive lying.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
And some people are just really good at lying.
Yeah.
Like, you can't tell. Right.
Wow.
And that's just a real thing. So
Yeah.
again, to those pastors' credit, like they
Absolutely.
just might not know.
They might not know.
They're
Exactly.
believing in somebody and they're not trained enough to see certain little things that are off that
that a
maybe a
counselor might
therapist would
see.
be like, oh, that's weird. Like
Yeah.
they're just like,
And a counselor is most likely seeing you every week, every other week,
yeah.
where they're getting like one-on-one time
Yeah.
with you as a couple, maybe
Yeah.
that is seeing, oh, okay, like that's that's strange. And yeah, I just think it's like counselors. I think of counselor at our previous church. I think you went to her too at some point, maybe not, but at least she knew of our stories. But she wrote us and just thanked us for like us sharing our stories. She was definitely mine and my ex's therapist for a while. And she just thanked us to say like, keep going. Yeah. Keep sharing your story. And I'm like, that's because she saw. Yeah. Like she would have seen everything. Yeah. Not everything, but like majority of things. And is like, like go for it, girls, because this is what needs to be shared. Yeah. Right. And I just think that's what it comes down to, is being like, okay, trust in the church, believe in the church, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just throw yourselves at the feet of the church to go fix all my problems, because they'll never do it.
And to just whatever they say, do it. Right. Especially if in your gut you're like, oh, this doesn't seem right. Like maybe then even take that to another trusted person. Be like, hey, this is the advice I've got. Yeah. Tell me honestly, do you feel like that's good advice? Yeah. Or no? You know, because even like I'm just thinking of too, because it's even like safety. Like I know I had heard of a story of a woman who she knew things were not good with her and her husband. She knew that her husband had been unfaithful to her. He'd been sort of emotionally abusive for sure. They went to a pastor. The pastor said the thing of like, oh, well, you just have to be more intentional. Have more sex with your husband. Yeah. Be connected. Do what he wants, blah, blah, blah. And she trusted the pastor. So she said, okay. And she tried to just do whatever he wanted. And then I forget what exactly was happening, but she started having some health issues. Jeez. And she went to a doctor. And she had a sexually transmitted disease that her husband had contracted from someone he was cheating on her with. Wow. And then gave it to her. Wow. And now she has this lifelong, and then the same thing. Eventually, the husband ended up leaving for one of these women. Yeah. And now she's like alone. She's a single mom. And she has this lifelong sexually transmitted disease because she kept having sex with someone that everyone knew was not faithful to her. And even to that, I'm like, pastors, come on. Like, that's not even her physical safety now. Yeah. Like, so her health has now been compromised for life. Yeah. Because someone, well-meaning, I'm sure, told her to have sex with somebody who they knew wasn't being faithful to her.
And because you're not asking enough questions. It comes back to like, ask the hard questions. And also, women, like, as scary as it is, you have to be able to tell the truth. Yeah. Like, honest. Like even you, like you say that you didn't really, or didn't feel like you could, or didn't.
Yeah. I would only tell like enough that I thought.
And I get it, because you were trying to protect him, because you don't want to throw his name in the dirt when you're married to him and fighting for a marriage and have to go home to him. Yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like nobody can be helped unless the full truth is coming out.
Well, and we went to this, the thing is too, with me and my ex, like we would go to a different therapist and then it would be fine until they challenged him or said something he didn't like. And then it was like, we're done. We're done. Right. Yeah. And so I was trying to count the other. I think I got up to 8, maybe 9 different therapists that we'd seen through our marriage, because he would just decide we're not saying this, and we would change. Near the end of our marriage, we went and saw this male counselor. I forget how we went to him, but someone recommended him, and my husband and him really clicked. And because he was really into music and my husband was, and it was like I knew something was off, because we would get there and half the time like something crazy had just happened or he'd been yelling at me the whole way there. We'd get there. I would just be like, oh, like this emotional mess. And the two of them would be sitting chit-chatting for like 10 or 15 minutes about music and a band. And I would just be like, this feels insensitive and unprofessional, but whatever. And and I remember, and then I think he even started coming to the same church that my husband worked at, or I don't know. It's like a really weird thing. But I remember, because my husband liked him and they were kind of almost like friends, like through the counseling. They didn't know each other before. Yeah. He told me like, would say like, you can say this and this and this, but he told me I could not tell him that he'd ever cheated or that he cheated. So that counselor never knew, even that we cheated. So then do you know the kind of advice we got from him? Not very good. Yeah. Because he just thought that
you're bumping the road.
Totally. And like that he's be like, I don't understand why you have all this like distance with him and you have all these walls up with your husband. And I'm thinking, of course you haven't have a sweet clue what's gone on between the two of us. Yeah. So in that case, like, could we get proper help and advice? Like kind of what you're saying. You have to be honest. No, not even from a therapist, because I didn't tell him because my husband asked me not to. And there would have been
And
consequences
listened,
if I would have.
Yeah.
So I didn't, but it was a waste of our time.
Right.
So if you're going to talk to somebody, a counselor, a friend, or a pastor,
Yeah.
you do have to be ready to say what's really happening.
Yeah.
If you want to get good advice, because you
Yeah.
can't later, like even with, this, like a lot of pastors from the early days of my life, I don't have anger, resentment. I have a lot of grace for them because I'll be the first one to say they didn't know everything. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into consideration. If you don't tell the truth to whomever, they can't help you. Right.
And I think that's like the theme or the underlying thing here. That is the thing, is to be like, if you are in some sort of like abusive marriage, or you are, being cheated on, is like, as hard as it's going to be, have the open conversation and trust God and the Holy Spirit enough that even if you do tell somebody, that it does not mean that it can't ever be like reconciled.
Right.
Because I think that's the thing. We try to protect our husbands because we're like, well, what if he does stay, or what if whatever? But like, you're not helping you're not helping him, you're not helping your kids.
It's so true.
It's so to like be open, be honest, have the conversation as hard as it is, because how else do you get healing?
Yeah. It's so true.
Right?
Yeah. And just go into wisdom in any conversation. Remember that people are just people. They're just flawed human beings.
Yeah.
Even a pastor is just a regular person.
Absolutely.
And everyone has their limitations.
Yeah.
And if you go and talk to somebody and they tell you things like, oh, just have sex more, or whatever, things that we hear, oh, just forgive them. And things that all these people wrote into us, like, oh, this is what my pastor told us and this is how it hurt me.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay if you go, wait, that doesn't seem right.
It doesn't sit right.
Or maybe they're not understanding. And you can, like, just don't give up. Keep finding somebody who can actually help you.
Yeah.
So if it isn't people in your church community,
keep looking.
That might be hard and sad, and I get that. But then, try a therapist or a friend or a family member or somebody. Don't give up. Keep reaching out for help.
Yes.
And then don't give up on the church either.
No.
Like, if you've been hurt by advice that your church has given you, just see if you can have grace and just say, you know what, the expectation for me is not going to be that you're that person in my life. Yeah. You're not the person who's going to give me advice. Yeah. I'm going to get that from someone else.
And we shouldn't be putting pastors on pedestals.
Yeah.
We should, like, we look at pastors like, we go to church as if like everyone needs to serve us. Yeah. And I'm like, that's actually not what the church is meant to be. Like, we are supposed to go into the church and serve. Yeah. And so when you're placing everything on a pastor, they're gonna fail you. Yeah. Like, and let's learn to be people that don't hold offenses. Like, why? Like, why are we holding offenses to somebody that said something to you one time? Be like, take that home and be like, wait a minute. It's a person, or it's people, or it's whatever. Like, we are meant to go into the church and become disciples and serve others. Yeah. But instead we think, oh, it's me.
Right. They need to help fix my life.
Yeah.
And and there's nothing wrong with going to your church for help and support. Of course. But also it's like, if somebody has given you advice that you've been hurt or offended by, the next question I think is good to ask yourself, this is something I'm trying to work on too with myself, is I'm going to ask myself, Kate, honestly, what was their intention when they gave that advice? Were they trying to be malicious? Yeah. Or were they giving the best they could, but maybe just out of ignorance, like, they didn't know any better, right? Yeah. And if it's the second, if you're like, no, I think they meant well. Yeah. Then even if the advice wasn't good advice, they meant well. Yes. And just appreciate they're trying. Yes. And just go in your mind, okay, I wouldn't go to them again. I'll go to somebody else, but I can still love and respect them because they did their best.
That's right. Right? That's right. And I think that is just it, is to ask those questions and to be like, what is the purpose of what this person is saying? Yeah. Because really, truthfully, half the time you will learn that it was either like they weren't equipped enough, or that it was just a misunderstanding. Like, I don't believe that any pastor out there is maliciously trying to give you bad advice.
Well, and maybe I will say there's a small portion that maybe are the kind of like, I'm going to shame you into staying. Yeah. But I agree. I think that's
few and far between,
minority, but it could happen. Yeah. Just, I want to put that in case people like, but if you see that, maybe just get out of there. Yeah. Get out of that influence altogether. Yeah. But I would agree. That's probably the odd thing, but you're right. Most of the time
it's not malicious. Yeah, it's not meant to be like, and then, or when they find out the whole truth, they would have been like, I wouldn't have ever agreed with this.
Totally.
I would have told you to walk away, right? Yeah. And so it is just finding that that balance and to be like, well, maybe this church isn't for me.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, as you get older too, one thing I've learned that I think is so interesting is like how everyone's so different and good at different things.
Yeah.
And that applies in the church world as well, and especially to pastors and leaders. Like some people, like the experience you had, are actually very good. They can handle hard conversations. It doesn't rattle them, doesn't make them nervous. They can kind of navigate through well. They're really wise. They give wise advice.
Yeah.
And then some people cannot handle conflict or hard things and makes them uncomfortable. Yeah. They just try to sweep it under the rug. They just want to get it over with, but they're good at other things.
That's right.
But so it's funny just too, if you can just like learn how people are and set your expectations accordingly. Yeah. And be like, even if other areas I've seen this person doesn't do well with awkward conversations or confrontation, let's not go to them with something hard. But if there's somebody that you know, like the person you knew, who you're like, hey, I could trust them because they sail through hard situations like that.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I think it's going into a scenario with no expectations. Yeah. Like that I think is the best thing. But also I do believe that there are pastors out there that are amazing teachers. Yeah. And that is what they're called to do. Yep. Then there's pastors out there that could be amazing teachers and have a very pastoral heart. Yeah. Or they might be very pastoral, but then their teaching's not great. Right. Whatever.
That's like, so true.
Right. And so I feel like the one pastor that like kind of walked me through that season had both. Right. He's an incredible teacher, and his pastoral heart was so beautiful that he was just like, and he would be one that fully believes in marriage. Yeah. But he was also like, okay, we can believe in marriage and make decisions in the process, right? And so I think it's just knowing that and learning that along the way.
Yeah, it's true. But it is the thing is, this whole issue is so complex. Very complex. I think that's sometimes, even when I've heard pastors like address it from the pulpit, I get a little nervous. I'm like, if they oversimplify it, because you're like, ooh, this is such a complex situation. Everyone's situation is so different. And to give like this is what you should do.
One and done, or like a one.
Like that's very hard, because you kind of can't really do that in this situation, because there's so many things at play. If somebody has mental health, if they have issues, if there's like, there's so much going on. So
you have to address each situation very differently.
Totally. So it is a hard thing to address, like from the pulpit in like a large congregation, because each person's going to take it a different way.
I still don't think we should shy away from it. I do think more churches need to talk about it. Yeah.
But I think be honest about this. Say, this is a complex issue.
Yes.
You know.
And do not insert your opinion with biblical truth.
Yeah. Totally.
Like if we're going to talk about it, then we talk biblically. Yeah. I don't want your opinion.
Right. Or be very clear. Be like, this is my opinion. This is not in the Bible necessarily. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which you can do. So I just hope that if like you were listening and you've been hurt by a church, or that you just don't give up, and because there's so many beautiful things that can come. We can do a million podcasts on all of the ways that churches love and support and care for people.
Absolutely.
So don't give up, and maybe a certain community isn't even for you, and that's okay if you find a community that is elsewhere more supportive. But just to, on both sides, I hope that like leaders and pastors give grace to people that are going through hard things. And I hope that us on the receiving end of some of the advice we get from church leaders can remember that they're just human and they're doing their best, and to give grace too.
Give grace. Yeah. And I think it's just also like, remembering that like nobody's perfect, and you're going to find issues no matter where you go. And if you've never been a part of a church world though, there are beautiful things that can come of it. Beautiful support systems, beautiful circles. Yeah. And so it's like, plant yourself. Yeah. But just set no expectations. Yeah. Because people will fail. Yeah. It doesn't matter, right? And so I'm glad we tackled this.
Yes. Yeah.
Today. I hope we tackled it well.
Right. And we're just people too. So
we're just imperfect people.
It hurt someone's feelings. It wouldn't be too, but
it's true. If we did, just DM us. We'll try to.
And if you're going through something, we are so sorry. Like some of the DMs have been so heartbreaking, and we think of you guys and pray for you guys all the time. Yeah. And we're happy to have any conversations that you ask, like this one, saying, please talk about this, because maybe people are less willing to talk about it because it is sticky and complicated.
It is sticky, but guys, thank you so much for listening. Yeah. Again, I hope this conversation feels refreshing, and that you can leave feeling like, wow, like I feel seen, I feel heard. And yeah, I'm just praying that God speaks to your heart, and that if you need to have a tough conversation today, that you would have peace knowing that you can do it, and you can do it with support and all things, like with God and everything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.
Bye.